All right, today we are talking about fractions. This is in preparation for section 1.3. In general, though, it's just in preparation for you to have more experience with fractions throughout the course. And so we will be talking about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions today using the calculator and otherwise. Now, I actually want to start with multiplying fractions today because that'll play a small role in adding and subtracting fractions above. So to start, it's also the easiest, which is nice. To start, it goes like this. I will actually just have to multiply the top row and then multiply the bottom row, and that's it. That's multiplying fractions. So I get 2 times 4 divided by 3 times 5, which gives me 8 over 15. That's it for multiplying fractions. So now if I look at the next one, I have 3 times 2 divided by 4 times 9. And that gives me 6 over 36. However, this fraction is clearly not reduced. They're clearly both even to start, divisible by a few different numbers. And so we actually need to reduce this fraction. So to do that, we could do it a few different ways, but I'm going to start by taking a 2 out of the numerator and the denominator, the top and the bottom. What that looks like is I'm going to do 6 divided by 2 and 36 divided by 2. That is what it means to pull a 2 out of the numerator and the denominator. And I end up with 3 over 18. In fact, though, that's still not reduced all the way because 3 and 18 both have a 3 in common. So what I can do is 3 divided by 3 over 18 divided by 3. And that gives me 1 over 6. And that is the fully reduced fraction for this problem. So as you notice, your top and bottom numbers have something in common. You want to pull that out by dividing both the top and the bottom by that single number. That's how you reduce them. And I want to talk about that inside of multiplying these ones. Now, when dividing fractions, you're actually just going to multiply by the reciprocal. And all the reciprocal is flip the fraction. So if I have 3/4 divided by 2/5, that is actually 3/4 times 5 over 2. I've just flipped the 2/5 into 5 over 2. And now it's just the straight ahead 15 over 8. That's it. There's no more reducing there. And in the next one, this is the same thing as doing 5 over 6 times 3 over 10. Okay, and then I get 15 over 60. And again, this actually reduces to 1 divided by 4. 15 goes into 64 times. All right, so that is multiplying and dividing fractions. Now I want to go back to talk about adding fractions. When my denominator is the same in adding fractions, it's really simple. I have 2/5 plus 1/5. And when I add those two fractions together, I leave the denominator alone. It does not change. And I add the numerators together. So that becomes 3/5. Now, when my denominators don't match, so here I have a 4 and here I have a 3, that's when we have to do a little extra work in order to be able to solve this problem. So we're actually going to go over to I have a little visual guide to help us. Let's say for this problem, we're trying to do 1/2 plus 1/3. This is just really an easy visual way to see it. When we stick these two together, we're left with this portion left over where we don't really know what it is, right? There's no easy way to stick 1/2 and 1/3 together to know exactly what that last piece is, unless we break them both into pieces that can be added together. What that looks like is when we use the same size pieces. Okay, so here I have 1/2 and 3/6. Well, when I take 3 of 6 total pieces, that is still 1/2. It's still the same thing. When I take 2 out of all 6 pieces, that is the same thing as 1/3. But now I can stick the 2 together and see that I have 3 plus 2 gives us 5 pieces overall. And let me scroll down for you a little bit. We get 5 pieces overall. You'll have to just believe me, it's getting cut off a little bit. This is 5 pieces overall. That's okay. So having a common denominator allows us to stick those 2 pieces together to understand that the total we're really looking at is 5 here. Okay, so going back to the worksheet now. When we need to add fractions that don't have the same denominator, we're going to make them have the same denominator. Not by changing the fraction itself, but by changing just how we're representing the fraction, we'll say. Okay, so to pick my least common denominator, the easiest thing to do is to multiply your 2 different denominators. In this case, that gives us 12. Now I'm going to look at, so this is part B extended, I'm going to look at taking 1/4, and I need to turn it into something that's over 12 without changing the fraction, mind you. So to do that, I'm going to do 1/4 times some number. Now I can multiply anything by 1 and I get the same number back. Which means if I multiply this by 1, a very careful choice of 1, then I can maybe get to a 12. Well, what represents 1 other than 3/3? Right? 3/3 is 1. Okay, but now I can actually change how my fraction is represented without changing its value. So what I get is 4 times 3 on the bottom, which gave it that 12, and 1 times 3 on the top, which gives us a 3. Now I chose the 3/3 because that's the number we multiplied 4 with in order to get to 12. So I knew that that was going to be a good choice. Let's do the same thing with 2/3. Well, this is the same as 2/3 times. Now I'm going to choose something that's equivalent to 1, something like 4/4, the other number. And I get 12 on the bottom like I wanted, and then I do 2 times 4 to get 8 on the top. Well, now I can do 3/12 plus 8/12, and I get 11/12. That's exactly what I was looking for. Being able to add these 2 fractions. Now, subtracting works a lot of the same way. So if I'm going to subtract fractions, I need the same denominator again. I need to know how many pieces we're really putting together, taking apart. So 5/8 minus 3/8, well, that is just the same thing as doing 5 minus 3 divided by 8, which is 2/8. Now notice both of these are even, which means I can reduce this fraction, and I can take a 2 out of both, and I get 1/4. Now for this second part, we need to, again, find a least common denominator. And the least common denominator here, let's just take 4 times 6. And we get 24. Technically, the least common denominator between 4 and 6 is 12. But rather than having to try to always figure out what is the least common divisor between 2 numbers, just multiply the 2. You might have to do more reducing of your actual fraction in the long run, but I'd rather do that than worry too much in this step about what we need to look at. So, okay, I need to change 3/4. 3/4 needs to be equal to some fraction with 24 on the bottom. So I'm going to do 3/4 and multiply it by 6/6 because that does not change the value of my fraction. Okay, and then I get 18. 3 times 6 is 18, and 4 times 6 is the 24 that we wanted. Now I need to rewrite 1/6, which is 1/6 times, well, I have a 6. I'm going to put the 4 in there. 4/4, which equals 4/24. Alrighty, now I can actually subtract the 2. 18/24 minus 4/24, and I get 14/24, which, again, they're both even, so I know I can reduce it. 2 goes into both of them. Okay, so I pull a 2 out of both of them and I get a 7 over 12. And that's the answer for that one. So we've officially reviewed adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing fractions. Anytime you're adding fractions or subtracting fractions, you must have a least common denominator. When you're multiplying or dividing, it's much simpler. You just go straight across. Now, there's some other really quick special cases I wanted to show you guys. And that those are listed out here. So anytime you have a 0 in your numerator, the overall fraction is always 0. When I have a 0 in my denominator, that's when I say it does not exist. Okay, so that's very important to note. 0 in the numerator is 0, 0 in the denominator does not exist. Now, if I have anything divided by 1, that means it's actually a whole number. So 5 over 1 is just 5. Now, this next case, 6 over 6, we've actually already seen that. 6 over 6 is actually 1. It always reduces something to itself. Next, we have 5 divided by 1/2. 5 over 1/2. Now, this is technically a division problem. So how I'm going to write this is I'm going to have 5 times 2 over 1. Okay? And now, I like to look at fraction times a fraction. Here we did multiply by the reciprocal case. Don't forget that. But in order to make the 5 a fraction, we'll put him over 1 as well. And then we get 10 over 1, which is really just 10. So 5 divided by 1/2 is the same thing as 5 over 1 times 2 over 1, right? We use the rule where we can stick the 1 under any number. And then we use the rule where we multiply by the reciprocal. We get 10 over 1, which is just 10. Now, similarly, we're going to think about 1/3 divided by 5 over 1, right? So all I did there was write this 5 with a 1 underneath it. Doesn't change the value. Okay, but now I can do a fraction times its reciprocal. So 1/3 times 1 over 5. So putting the 1 underneath the 5 here makes it a fraction divided by a fraction, which we know how to do. We multiply by the reciprocal. So I take my fraction of 1/3 divided by my fraction of 5 over 1, and I multiply by 1 over 5 instead, which gives me 1 over 15. Okay, couple more little cases to talk about. First off, with our negatives, anytime we have a negative in the numerator, a negative in the denominator, it's the same thing as having the same fraction, like with the negative out front. Doesn't matter where you put your negative. And then lastly, the 0 over 0 we call indeterminate, or does not exist. Okay, so that's pretty much it. That's a quick overview of all different fraction stuff. I highly recommend that you get some practice in and do the rest of the practice problems on this worksheet. An answer key is already posted, so take a look, see how you're doing, and give them a go. You know what, guys? There's actually one more thing I want to talk to you about, and that is using your calculator. So whenever using a calculator, this is an example basically of a TI-84 online. And so you're going to work with me a little bit. We'll make sure that you can see it as well as possible. Let me try to zoom out for a second. Is that a little bit better? There we go. Now you can see most of the calculator. Okay, so we're going to clear the calculator like that. And then anytime you want to enter a fraction in a calculator, I highly recommend you use the parentheses, a whole bunch. Just get really used to always using parentheses. So let's say I have that problem of 1/2. Oops. 1, and I use my divided by key, notice, to write in fractions. And now I'm going to say plus parentheses 1/3. Okay, that was that very first problem that we started out with. Notice how I use parentheses. Technically, you don't always have to, but even visually, it's nice to be able to see your fractions like this. And we just use the divided by key, I hit enter, and totally classic, it did not give it to me in a fraction. It gave it to me as a decimal. Well, there's a way to convert it to a decimal on these calculators, which is really great. And to do that, we hit the math button. And see how that number 1 is fraction, and it's already highlighted on that fraction. So we hit enter. And then we hit, it's going to turn the answer into a fraction. I hit enter again, and look at that, I got 5/6. So anytime you're trying to add fractions, divide fractions, multiply, subtract, anything, you can use a calculator and hit math and hit that fraction, which I just had to hit enter, and it'll translate it to a fraction for you. So that's another helpful tip. Hopefully you can start to get used to working with the fractions on a calculator as well. I really want you guys to be able to use these because you do get to use them on the test. So let me know if you have any questions on fractions, and good luck moving forward.